She would not even glance at the quiet nanny filling the water jug. She waved at her like waving off a fly. They spoke as if that woman were furniture. It was the most expensive mistake they would ever make. Have you ever stood in a room where people talked about you like you were not even there? Have you ever been treated as if you were too small, too poor, too foreign to matter? And have you ever known something, one quiet thing, that could change everything if you ever chose to say it out loud? This is the story of a woman named Nneka. She left her home in West Africa and traveled all the way to London to work as a nanny so she could feed the family she loved. She was soft-spoken. She kept her eyes on the floor, and the rich couple who hired her decided she was no one at all. They were so sure she could not understand them that they planned a wicked thing right in front of her, in the language they believed was their secret. But Nneka grew up speaking that language before she could walk. What she did with what she heard, and the exact moment she chose to speak, is why you will not be able to look away. If stories of betrayal and quiet justice move you, take 1 second to subscribe. It truly helps. Now, let's begin. Nneka came from a small town in the east of Nigeria, where the red dust rose behind every car and the market women called each other sister. She was raised by a grandmother who spoke only the mother tongue, deep Igbo, old Igbo, the kind full of proverbs and weight. Nneka learned to speak that language before she learned to walk in shoes. It was the sound of home. It was the sound of love. She was not a loud woman. Life had never given her the room to be loud. Her own mother was sick. Her little girl, Ozioma, was only 4 years old, with her father long gone. So when the offer came for work in London, a live-in nanny for a wealthy Nigerian family, Nneka kissed her daughter's forehead, held her a moment too long, and got on the plane. Every pound she earned would fly straight back home. That was the whole reason. That was the only reason. The house in London took her breath away. Tall and white, on a quiet street where the parked cars cost more than her entire town. Inside, everything shone. And the family who lived there shone too, on the outside. The husband called himself David, but his mother called him Chukwudi, his real name, the name she had prayed over the day he was born. David wore fine suits and spoke in a smooth London voice, and he did not like being reminded of the town he came from. His wife, Chioma, was beautiful and sharp, with long nails and a colder smile. She had 2 children, Kamsi, who was 5, and a baby boy, and she handed them to Nneka on the first morning the way you hand over a bag. That first morning, Chioma walked Nneka through the house, listing rules. Then she turned to David right there in front of Nneka and spoke in Igbo. "She looks slow," Chioma said, "but slow is fine. Slow is cheap, as long as she keeps her mouth shut." Nneka understood every word. She kept her face soft and empty. She said, "Yes, madam," in careful English, and she looked at the floor. And in that 1 second, Nneka made a decision that would change everything. She decided to say nothing. She decided to let them believe she was deaf to their language, because a poor woman, far from home, learns a hard truth quickly. Sometimes, the safest thing you can be is underestimated. If they believed she understood nothing, they would guard nothing in front of her. And something in that cold, shining house told her she had better listen. So Nneka became invisible on purpose. There was only one person in that house who looked at her like a human being. And it was the person the family treated worst of all. Mama Adeze, David's mother, a widow near 70, with soft gray hair and hands that had worked a lifetime. Her husband had bought their house 40 years before and built the family up from nothing. And when he died, David and Chioma had moved Mama in with them, not to care for her, Nneka slowly understood, but to keep an eye on her. They spoke to Mama like she was a child. They gave her the food nobody else wanted. They left her alone in her room for hours. And when relatives called, Chioma would smile and say, "Oh, we take such good care of Mama," while Mama sat quiet in the corner, growing smaller by the day. But Mama Adeze was kind to Nneka. On Nneka's second night, when the house was asleep, Mama found her in the kitchen and pressed a warm plate into her hands. "Eat, my daughter," she said in English. "You are too thin. Who is feeding you?" She sat with Nneka while she ate. She asked about her home, her family, her little girl. She listened. Nneka felt her throat go tight. It had been a very long time since anyone had called her my daughter. Night after night, the two women found each other in that quiet kitchen. Mama told stories of her husband, of the town, of the years when love was simple. Nneka listened, and something grew between them, soft and real, the way a small fire grows. What neither of them knew yet was that a storm was already gathering in that house, and it was coming for them both. The weeks passed, and Nneka did her work well. She learned Kamsi's favorite songs. She learned which cry from the baby meant hunger and which one meant sleep. Little Kamsi began to follow her everywhere, holding the edge of her dress. In that whole cold house, Nneka gave the children the one warm thing nobody else offered, her full attention. And all the while, she listened. Nobody guards their words in front of furniture. David and Chioma spoke freely around her, and more, when they had something to hide, they slipped into Igbo. They thought it was a locked door. They did not know Nneka held the key. The first time, it was about money. Late one night, Nneka was clearing the dining table when David came in, loosening his tie, his face gray. Chioma followed, arms crossed. They did not lower their voices. Why would they? The maid was right there, and the maid heard nothing. "How bad?" Chioma asked in Igbo. "Bad," David said. "The investment is gone, all of it, and the men I borrowed from are not patient men." Chioma was quiet for a moment. Then she said the thing that made Nneka's hands go still on the plates. "Then it is simple," Chioma said. "Your mother is sitting on a fortune. That house is worth more than £1 million. She is old. She does not need it. We do." Nneka kept wiping the same clean spot on the table, round and round, her heart pounding in her ears. "She will never sell," David said. "My father built that house. She would rather die in it." "Then we do not ask her," Chioma said softly. "We take it. There are doctors who will write a letter for the right price. One letter, and she is not of sound mind. One signature on a power of attorney, and everything she owns is ours to manage. We sell the house. We put her somewhere small and quiet. And we breathe again." There was a long silence. Then David said, "And how do we get her to sign?" And Nneka knew. She knew it all now. She stood in that bright dining room, holding a dirty plate, and she felt sick to her stomach, because the sweet old woman who called her my daughter was going to be robbed by her own son. After that night, Nneka listened to everything. Piece by piece, in stolen sentences, the plan came together right in front of her. A doctor had been found, a man who owed David a favor and needed money of his own. He would sign a letter saying Mama Adeze was confused, forgetful, unfit to manage her own affairs. It was a lie. Mama was sharp as a blade. Nneka saw it every single day. Mama remembered every birthday. She remembered the exact price of yams in her town 30 years ago. One night, she recited a whole proverb her late husband used to say, word for word, and then patted Nneka's hand and told her, "My husband's brother, Obiora. He is the only one in this family with real sense. If anything ever happens to me, you find Uncle Obiora." She remembered everything. But a lie on paper with a doctor's name at the bottom is a powerful thing. And Chioma grew crueler by the day. Nneka watched it. She watched Chioma forget to bring Mama her tea. She watched her speak to Mama in that slow, loud voice you use for someone you have already decided is stupid. Once, when Mama gently asked David to sit and talk with her, Chioma waited until Mama had left the room, then laughed and said in Igbo, "Look at her, begging for attention. The sooner she is out of this house, the better. She has had her life. Now it is our turn." Nneka, folding laundry in the corner, dug her nails into her own palm to keep her face still. She wanted to run to Mama. She wanted to take those soft old hands and say, "Your son is planning to steal everything you have. Do not sign anything. Trust no one." But then the fear would rise. She was a nanny, far from home, on a temporary visa with a daughter to feed. Who would believe the maid over the family? If she spoke and they threw her out, her little Ozioma back home would go hungry, and Mama would be robbed anyway. Only now, with no one left in the house who cared. If she spoke too soon, she would lose everything and save no one. So Nneka waited, and it was the hardest thing she had ever done. She poured Mama her tea when Chioma forgot. She sat with her longer in the kitchen. She could not warn her with words, not yet. But she could be there, and she watched for her moment. Then, one evening, she heard the plan take its final shape. David and Chioma sat in the sitting room with wine, and Nneka passed by with the laundry basket, slow and silent. "We do it at a family gathering," Chioma was saying in Igbo. "We call it a blessing for Mama, a little party. We invite Uncle Obiora, the aunties, the cousins, the whole family. In front of all of them, we tell them, gently, that Mama is not well, that she needs looking after, that the house is too much for her now. And then we bring out the papers. With the whole family watching and nodding, what can she do? An old woman cannot say no to her entire family. She will pick up the pen. She will sign." "And the relatives?" David asked. "Uncle Obiora is not a fool." "They are old and simple," Chioma said, waving her hand. "We speak our own language. We smile. We cry a little. They will be eating out of our hands. Nobody in that room will understand what is really happening." She smiled and sipped her wine. Nobody. Nneka stood just outside the door, holding the basket, and something inside her went very quiet and very still. The gathering was set for that Sunday, and that Sunday came too fast. On the morning of it, before the guests arrived, Nneka found Mama sitting alone at the kitchen table, turning her wedding ring around and around on her thin finger. She looked up at Nneka, and her eyes were wet. "They're having a party for me today," Mama said softly, in English. "My son, my family." She tried to smile and could not. But my heart is heavy, my daughter, and I do not know why. I feel as though something is coming to take my home from me, the home my husband built with his own 2 hands. She reached out and held Neka's wrist. Am I just a foolish old woman? Neka looked down at the frightened, trusting face of the only person in that house who had ever been kind to her. And she knew that in a few hours, she would have to make a choice. Stay silent, keep her job, protect her own child, and watch this woman be destroyed. Or open her mouth at last and let them all discover, far too late, exactly what the invisible woman had heard. If your heart is pounding for Mama right now, good. Stay with me, because everything I've told you was leading to this one room on this one Sunday. If you believe the quiet ones see everything, take 1 second to subscribe, and let's walk into that gathering together. Sunday came, and the big white house filled up with family. They arrived in their best clothes, in bright wrappers and good shoes. Aunties Neka had never met, cousins with loud laughs, and last of all, walking slow with a carved wooden cane, came Uncle Obiora, David's late father's brother, an old man with sharp, patient eyes that seemed to see everything and say little. Mama's whole face lifted when he came through the door. She had told Neka the truth of it in the kitchen. In all this family, Obiora was the only one left with real sense. The sitting room glowed. There was jollof rice and fried chicken and small chops and music playing soft, and David moving through it all with his smooth London smile, calling everyone uncle and auntie, playing the good son. Chioma floated beside him in gold, laughing her cold laugh, resting her hand on Mama's shoulder whenever a relative looked their way. We take such good care of Mama. And Neka moved through the room like a shadow, filling glasses, clearing plates, invisible, exactly as they wanted her. But Neka was watching everything. She saw the moment David gave Chioma a small nod. She saw Chioma slip out and come back with a leather folder and set it down quiet on the side table near the pen. She felt the whole room shift, though nobody else did. The party was not a party. The party was a trap, dressed up in music and rice. David tapped his glass with a fork. The room went soft and still. Family, he said warmly, thank you for coming. You know how much we love this woman. He put his hand on his mother's shoulder. My mother, my father's wife, she gave us everything. He let his voice drop, sad and gentle. But it is hard to say. Mama has not been herself. She forgets things now. She gets confused. We worry for her every day. A murmur went round the room. The aunties clucked. Ndo, sorry. Old age is not a gift. Mama Adeze looked up, startled. I am not confused, she said softly. But her voice was small against his, and nobody seemed to hear it but Neka. We even have a letter from the doctor, Chioma added, sliding a paper halfway from the folder, just enough for everyone to see it was official. It is all here. Poor Mama needs help now. She cannot manage the house, the money, all of it alone. So we will manage it for her, to protect her. She smiled around the room. That is all this is. Protection. Then Chioma leaned toward David and said, low and quick, in Igbo, the private door, the locked room, the language for talking about people, not to them. Give her the pen. The old ones are already nodding. Nobody here understands what they are really signing. And she laughed, softly, sure she was safe. David picked up the pen. He pressed it gently into his mother's thin, shaking hand. He guided her fingers toward the line at the bottom of the page. "Just here, Mama," he said, kind as poison. "Just your name. For your own good." Mama Adeze looked down at the pen in her hand. She looked at the paper. And then she lifted her head and looked around that whole crowded, smiling room, searching every face for one person who would help her. The aunties looked away. The cousins looked at their food. Uncle Obiora watched, frowning, sensing something wrong, but not yet knowing what. And then Mama's frightened eyes found the only face that had never once turned away from her, Nneka's. And in that 1 second, Nneka felt the whole weight of her life pressing down on her chest. Her job, her visa, her little Ozioma back home, waiting for the money only this house could pay. If she opened her mouth, she could lose it all by morning. If she stayed silent, she kept her wages and watched them destroy the one person in London who had ever loved her. The pen touched the paper, and Nneka set down the water jug. She stepped forward, out of the shadow, into the middle of that bright room where nobody had ever really looked at her before. "Stop," Nneka said. "Do not sign that, Mama." The room turned to stare at her. Chioma's face twisted. "Excuse me? Go back to the kitchen. This is family business. Who told you to speak?" And that was the moment Nneka chose. She looked Chioma dead in the eyes, and she opened her mouth, and out came deep Igbo. Old Igbo. The Igbo of her grandmother, rich and clear and rolling, the language they had used as their secret knife. She spoke it better than either of them, and she spoke it loud enough for every soul in that room to hear. "I understand every word you say," Nneka said in their own tongue. "I have understood since the first morning I walked into this house." The color drained out of Chioma's face. The pen slipped from Mama's fingers and rolled across the table. Nneka did not stop. She turned to the room, to the aunties and the cousins, and to Uncle Obiora, and she gave them back the couple's own words, the words spoken in the dark, in the kitchen, over wine, repeated now in the open to their faces. "On my first day," Nneka said, "this woman looked at me and said, 'She looks slow.' But slow is fine. Slow is cheap. As long as she keeps her mouth shut." She looked at David. "And you both stood in that dining room, and I heard you say your investment was gone, and the men you borrowed from were not patient men." David shot to his feet. "She's lying. She's a mad woman." "You said," Nneka went on, steady, "my mother is sitting on a fortune. That house is worth more than £1 million. She is old. She does not need it. We do." The room gasped. "You said, there are doctors who will write a letter for the right price. One letter, and she is not of sound mind." Nneka pointed at the paper in the folder. "That is the letter. It is a lie. This woman is not confused. She remembers everything. I know because I am the one who has sat with her every single night while you left her alone in her room." Uncle Obiora rose slowly from his chair, both hands on his cane, and the whole room went silent under his terrible, quiet stare. "And this morning," Nneka said, and her voice finally shook, "before all of you came, this woman sat in that kitchen and cried, and asked me if she was a foolish old woman for feeling that someone was coming to take her home, her husband's home." She looked at Chioma. "You said the family was old and simple. You said we would all be eating out of your hands. You said nobody in this room would understand what is really happening." She let the silence hold for one breath. "I understood," Neka said. I understood all along. Nobody moved. Kamsi, the little girl, had come to stand at the edge of the room, holding the hem of Neka's dress, staring up at her mother and father with big, frightened eyes. Chioma broke first. This is nonsense. She is a servant. You will believe a maid over your own family? But her voice was too high, too fast, and she made her fatal mistake. She spun to David and snapped, in Igbo, forgetting even now. Say something! Get her out before she ruins. I understand that too, Neka said quietly in Igbo. And the whole room heard it. The whole room understood now that there had never been any secret language in this house at all. There had only been a woman they decided was too small to matter, standing in the corner, hearing every word. Uncle Obiora walked to the side table. He picked up the doctor's letter with 2 fingers, the way you pick up something rotten. He read it. He looked at David, at Chukwudi, the boy whose name his own brother had prayed over, and the old man's eyes filled with a grief so deep it was worse than any shouting. Sit down, Chukwudi, Obiora said. You have said enough for one lifetime. And David sat down. What happened next did not happen with screaming. It happened with the slow, heavy justice of an old family closing ranks around the one it should have protected all along. Uncle Obiora tore the doctor's letter in half, and then in half again, and let the pieces fall on the floor. He turned to the room. There will be no signing today, he said, and there will be no signing ever, not while I breathe. He looked at the shredded paper. We will find the name of the doctor who put his hand to this lie, and that doctor will answer for it, to the medical board and to the law. The aunties, who had clucked and nodded for David an hour before, now looked at him and Chioma with hard, cold faces. One of them went straight to Mama Adeze and wrapped her in her arms. Another began, quietly, to gather her things. Nobody wanted to sit at that table anymore. Mama Adeze did not shout either. She sat very still, and she looked at her son for a long, long moment. And when she finally spoke, her voice was steady in a way it had not been in years. You would have put me in a small room somewhere, she said to him, and sold your father's house. And I would have gone quietly, Chukwudi, because I love you. A single tear ran down her cheek. That is the part you counted on, that I love you too much to fight you. David could not look at her. Mama. I am not finished, she said. And he went quiet, like a boy. You are my son. I carried you. I will not curse you, and I will not throw you into the street, because that is not who your father raised me to be. She let that sit. But you will never again touch one thing that is mine. Uncle Obiora will hold my affairs now, my house, my money, all of it, until the day I choose otherwise. The house your father built goes into protection in my name so that no hand, not yours, not your wife's, can ever move it again. You will not live in it. You will earn your own way, the way your father earned his. She looked at Chioma, and her voice went to iron. And she will never sleep another night under my roof. That was the mercy, and that was the boundary. He was still her son. He was simply no longer in charge of anything but his own shame. Then Mama Adeze turned, and she looked for the woman who had saved her. Neka, she said, and she held out both her hands. My daughter, come here. Neka came, and the old woman took her hands and pressed them, And she said it loud, so the whole family would hear and remember. This woman owes me nothing. She had everything to lose, and she stood up for me anyway, when my own blood sat silent. From today, she is not a servant in this house. She is family. She looked at Uncle Obiora, who nodded. She will be cared for properly and paid properly. And that little girl of hers back home, Ozioma, we are going to bring her here, to her mother. No child should grow up an ocean away from the one who loves her. I know how that feels now. I will not let it stand. Neka, who had kept her face still and empty for so many long months, finally let it break. She wept. And Mama held her, and little Kamsi wrapped her arms around them both. David and Chioma left that house quietly, in front of the whole family, with nothing they had schemed for. The house was safe. The lie was dead. And the woman they had treated like furniture was standing in the warm center of the room, held in the arms of everyone who mattered. Sometimes the person you decide is nothing is the only one who will save you. Let me tell you what I take from Neka's story. The people who talk about you like you cannot hear, like you are too poor, too foreign, too small to matter. They are showing you exactly who they are. And they are handing you something too. Because a person who is underestimated is a person who is watching and learning and holding a truth they can set down at the perfect moment. Neka never raised her hand. She never raised her voice. Not until the very end. Her power was that she paid attention when no one thought she was worth hiding things from. Her power was patience and quiet and the courage to speak on someone else's behalf when it would have been so much safer to stay silent. So be careful how you treat the quiet one in the corner. Be careful who you call nobody. And if you are that quiet one right now, overlooked, spoken over, invisible in a room full of people, take heart. You are not weak. You are listening. And one day, in your own language and your own time, you will speak.